Hi, this is Dr. Steve Vargo, and this is episode 17 of Can I Ask You One Question, where we dive into the minds of topic experts and thought leaders, and we try to learn one critical thing from them that we can apply to our practices, professional lives, maybe even our business lives. And I have with me health behavioral scientist, Dr. Kathleen Starr, and Dr. Starr is a co-author of a wonderful book that I read this past year, and she was kind enough to come on and talk with us for a little bit. The book is Why We Resist: The Surprising Truths About Motivating Behavior Change. And it really addresses the question of why do people resist healthcare change and how do we move them from resistance to action? So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Starr.
Thanks for having me.
Resistance is something in my field of eye care that's actually very common. We talk to patients a lot about things like healthier vision habits, and we recommend treatments and lifestyle modifications. And ultimately, we're trying to get patients to change, but so often we do run up against that resistance. So my question to you is, what are 3 ways doctors can overcome patient resistance and motivate change?
Awesome. My favorite topic. So one, thank you for reading the book. And the purpose there was really so everybody could really understand this is just human nature, right? So it's not our patients are good or bad. It's just human nature. And that's what we're working with. So the 3 things I would say: 1, remember that your patients aren't blank slates, right? Instead, they're bringing their own set of experiences and expectations to the table. So they'll use their own unique lens based on their past experiences to interpret what the heck we're saying to them, right? So a lot of what we do is, educate patients. So tip number 1 would be find out and where you need to meet the patient. Just simply asking patients things like, what have you heard about X, Y, and Z? Right? To get a sense of how their past experiences or what they've heard is kind of shaping how they're going to interpret your direction or your recommendations. And that gives you an opportunity to correct misassumptions or correct a misinterpretation of what you say. So that would be the first thing, kind of making sure we're starting on a level playing field, because that in itself could really deter motivation. Second thing is remembering that motivation isn't all that rational, right? Patients may not be moved by just the facts. So tip number 2 would be bolster and really try to dig into the emotional and social drivers of motivation. What do I mean by that? Things like checking in on folks and asking them, how confident do you feel about this treatment plan? How confident do you feel that this treatment is going to work for you? We know that people not believing in their medication is a factor in them not adhering to their recommendation. Also, asking and figuring out and helping them feel confident that they can actually follow through. Right? So I gave you directions X, Y, and Z. How confident are you that you could do this? And helping them build that confidence. And another thing is, again, this would relate to anybody that's in sales, drive commitment. You know how you say, close the sale? Ask them specifically, can you do this? Will you do this? And if you have a good relationship with the patient, feel free to say, hey, I'd like you to do me a favor. I'd like you to try this out. We are social animals, and we are actually really compelled by a sense of obligation. So that could just be that little emotional nudge that gets them over the hurdle. Then, do you want anything to say? Okay.
I'm just taking notes.
And then the third thing is, I would say, is actually motivation doesn't always get us to action. So we're talking about motivation, but just because patients aren't taking our recommendations and aren't changing, don't assume there's not motivation. Actually, there can be a huge gap between what we want to do and what we actually do. And what's really interesting is the science says that moving from intention to action is really just can be simple as forming an action plan. So helping patients break down long-term vague goals. Yeah, I'm going to do this into very concrete action plans is really helpful, because human nature, it's way too easy for people to discount those vague future things. Yeah, I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to try that. But getting very specific where people can visualize when, the time they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, actually starts building what we call traces in memory. Because what we want people to do is visualize what they're going to be doing. It's called implementation intentions. We want them to form that action plan of how I'm actually going to do this. And it's super easy. It's one of the easiest things of just if then, every time I get up and I let the dog out, I am going to drink a cup of water. Or every morning when I brush my teeth, I am going to take my blood pressure medicine. So those kinds of things have been shown to be extremely effective in helping people actually eventually form those habits, because in their environment, those will be cues that go, oh yeah, dog, out, water, healthy, was told I need to do that.
These are so good. I love the one about commitment, because I think that's the one. I've talked about this before, and I know that you're probably aware of it too. The research on once we make a commitment to something, we're much more likely to follow through with it, all the way from Robert Cialdini on down.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought this up before, that if we can, what is that next step? And I think doctors, even in my field, walk right up to that line and dangle our toes over it, but we're afraid to cross that line. So we just stick our hand out. We say, thanks for coming in. Somebody else will help you out there. But we stop short of getting the patient to commit to something. And it could be done without seeming overly pushy. Just, are you on board with what we're talking about? Can you commit to this next step? And getting them to actually take action. And I've always been of the idea that even a small action is better than filling someone's head with a lot of information, but having them do nothing. So what is that change that you can make that you can get people to take? And that human nature component is so important. So I'm so glad you came on. I loved your book. How do we find out more about you and your book?
So it's on Amazon. The book is Why We Resist. I'm with Syneos Health, the corporation, and all the proceeds actually go to a nonprofit that supports bringing clinical trials to underserved populations. So that, just FYI, that's not a personal endorsement to go buy the book. And just reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of speaking and consulting, and I'm really passionate about how the science of behavior change could help really create more frictionless experiences for patients across, the industry.
Perfect.
So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. And thanks everyone for listening. And I'm going to put those links in the show notes, which you can find, and along with previous episodes, at drstevevargo.com. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.